Hey everyone, welcome to our coach chat. Thank you for joining. We'll get started by introducing ourselves, and then I will let Robbie take it away. So I'm Melanie. I am part of the PlayVS community team, former teacher, and love to educate coaches on how to survive and support their programs. So we are joined by Super Coach Robbie Hernandez today. Robbie is a computer science teacher and the head esports coach at Thomas Jefferson High School in San Antonio, Texas. And he's been involved for esports for over a decade and part of education since 2014. Thank you for joining us, Robbie. Robbie is going to be talking about supporting consoles. We kind of switched it from the title. It says BYOD and console support. We're actually going to go over console support first and then how to support kids bringing their own devices. And yeah, make sure you ask questions in the Q&A so that we can do that. Introduce yourself in the chat, and then we'll have like about 30 minutes in our networking after Robbie finishes. So I will disappear and let Robbie take it away.
All right. Thank you, Melanie. Let me set this up as soon as you get off. Thank you. And here I go. Yeah, that looks right. So as Melanie said, my name is Robbie Hernandez. I'm the coach at San Antonio, Texas, or in San Antonio, Texas at Jefferson High School. And yeah, so I'm going to go over console support first. That was our welcome and introduction. Thank you so much, Melanie. And then I'm going to go over how we're going to handle all the console stuff and facilitating your students, accelerating your program, because money is always going to be a huge issue. So obviously, the games that need console support are going to be the main console games, such as Smash, Splatoon, Madden, and FIFA. And so those consoles are listed here. And then, of course, you can also play Rocket League and Smite on console, although those are more optimized when you're playing on PC. So I'll say that. And most of my conversation today will be focused on the Nintendo Switch, just because I think that's more of a competitive title that is geared towards support, whereas Madden FIFA is less competitive. And then Rocket League and Smite, as I said, are more geared towards PC. But any of these can be console, and any of the tips that I bring up can be used. So make sure, just overarching overview, whenever you've got consoles, you need specific accounts for those consoles. So if that's a Nintendo Switch, you need an account on each console. You can use a Nintendo Switch online membership, which is going to be $20 per year. So it's the most cost-effective membership across PS4 and Nintendo and Xbox. But along with that, you're going to need, you can get a family membership that will cover multiple consoles, which is $35 per year, and that can cover up to 8 accounts. So that is a way you can save money. But every account you have your students, your more competitive programs are going to have every DLC character, which is going to take time to unlock, and it's going to take money to unlock those DLC packs. And then, of course, your cost increases every single time you think about controllers, Ethernet adapters, the internet at the campus. So all those things need to be taken into account when you're considering console support. With PlayStation, of course, you're going to need your PlayStation Plus membership. I don't know what the cost is specifically for that. And then with whatever console they're on, their specific console, you're going to need to log in a player onto that console. So it's kind of, my face kind of covers it a little bit, but the games that have console support are all of those: Smite, Rocket League, FIFA, Madden, Smash, Splatoon. And then you're going to need some controller for that. With Smash, one team can play off of one controller, but usually COVID sharing isn't the best option. And some controllers are different, so certain players prefer certain controllers. Splatoon would need 4 switches all connected together. So if you're playing Splatoon, keep that in mind. Madden and FIFA are solo games, best of threes now. They're no longer team games. So you would need just one console, one controller for that one. And then Rocket League and Smite are also solo per the console. But Smite would be 5 players. So you would need 5 consoles potentially if you have all your players playing on that. Same thing with Rocket League, 3 consoles, and then a controller for each one of those. So it kind of like changes for each one. But like I said, I am going to be focusing mostly on the Nintendo Switch side of it. And what I really wanted to talk about for this is just like what are common misconceptions that prevent a program from being successful when it comes to consoles, which is number one, not everyone gets the account. Okay, so you buy a Switch, you buy a controller, you buy the game, and you're like, all right, we signed up our team for Smash in the fall. We're ready to go. The first preseason game comes around, and you're like, oh, we didn't realize we needed to get an account, especially if your players are playing at home. If you got each one joining an arena at the same time, each player needs to have Nintendo Online, which is $20 from each player. So getting that stuff situated out beforehand, that is one of the common pitfalls. Saving money with the family account, you can share that, like I said, with up to 8 consoles when it comes to the Nintendo Switch. And as long as each Switch has the game on it, so you can't share the game between each Switch, but as long as each Switch has the game on it, the family account, you can play online from each of those Switches. So if you've got 6 players and they're all playing at home from their own Nintendo Switches, one family account can cover all 6 of those players. So something to keep in mind. You can save each of those 6 players $20 per year. And then trying to figure out like how you're going to communicate, because if you're on a Nintendo Switch, you're going to need a laptop or some communication device off to the side so you guys can communicate stage bans. Are you going to do it through email? Are you going to communicate with the coach beforehand and set it up in a Discord? How are you going to handle substitutions between games or before the series starts, I guess? Who's going to take care of the match creation? Are you going to take care of it? These things need to get tested beforehand on your school network if you're playing from school. Because I know from my school network, our Nintendo Switches can't host a match, or we can't join a match. We can only host a match. It's super weird. So figure those things out and figuring out between the other coach how you're going to set up that communication. And just keep in mind, especially with IT, Wi-Fi is always going to be a little bit laggier, and it's going to be a little bit more it's going to bring up more security concerns with your IT. So if you can set up a wired connection, add that to the cost for each of the switches or consoles, because that's going to be something that you're going to want to consider to support your IT supporting esports. So when it comes to having the students bring their own device, what are some things to facilitate that? So I've had students bring their own devices, and these are the things that I've tried to keep in mind. Number one is going to be security. You don't want the students to be bringing their device and just lugging it around all day, because if they set it down next to them in the lunchroom, all of a sudden, like, that thing goes missing and mom is mad at you because little Johnny just lost their PS4 or their Nintendo Switch because there was no way to secure it. And they're bringing it here so they can play esports after school. but you're not securing it. So having a way to secure it, lock up the devices in a closet, in your classroom, in a corner, have specific drop off time, some sort of system where the students like, okay, drop it off before school, we play after school or during our practice period, whatever you guys have, and then you take it home that day. Or maybe they just like, okay, I'm going to leave it here tonight, I'll take it home on the weekends to practice on my own. Just making sure that stuff is secure. So I've got a closet where I lock it up every single night. Having extra equipment helps so much. So having a kid bring in their PS4 or their Nintendo Switch and their controller and their docking station and like all this stuff that makes it, students don't want to connect that at school and then disconnect it and then bring it home and connect it again if they're going to play at night. So if you have, all right, so you're not buying the game and you're not buying the Nintendo Switch, but you can save costs and you can support your students bringing their devices by having extra controllers, having extra HDMI cords, having extra docking stations. These things are a lot easier to sell to an administration. If you're like, all right, I don't need $600 for 2 Nintendo Switches and stuff, okay? My students are going to bring in Nintendo Switches, give me $100 and we can support 9 players immediately off the bat. So things to consider. Instead of having students bring it in like a grocery bag that's going to tear, have specific swag that's going to advertise your team. So like backpacks to transport laptops efficiently, and then being consistent in that equipment. If one player is bringing the Switch who has all the DLC packs, what's going to happen? Like, think about if they don't show. What are you going to do when they don't show? Is just practice canceled all of a sudden because you don't have a Nintendo Switch that day? So trying to be consistent with your players, setting up that communication via a Discord server, a team Discord server is going to be huge. A website, for esports on your school about like who's in charge of bringing equipment on certain days, or you can make some sort of rotation happen. So just making sure consistency happens, because especially when it comes to like the DLC packs or players bought when it comes to like FIFA and Madden for the teams and such. If someone doesn't have the characters that you're playing that day, especially on match day, then that's going to throw a wrench into everything. So, just continuing this thing about how to set it up with like IT and admin, make sure that you get approval with your admin first. Just let them know like, hey, is it cool? Like if I have students bringing in their own stuff, like they're probably going to tell you, just have the kid sign a waiver. Okay. If they're using their device, have the kid sign a waiver, making sure that you and the school aren't responsible. That's probably a big thing that your admin are going to consider, is the liability. Setting it up with the IT department. So build a relationship so that the IT can get these MAC addresses easily. And it goes back to that consistency, right? If the same player is bringing in that equipment and your IT can set it up so that one laptop or that one console is always going to be allowed. If you have rotations of or if you have like a random student bringing it on one day and then they don't show up for a month, or like, it's going to cause a headache if you put in the work to allow this one Switch, this one PS4, this one laptop through your network. And it's going to be a lot of work for nothing. So it goes back to consistency, building a relationship with your IT department so that if you do set it up where a kid is bringing in their console, you've got that going with them already. So IT is always going to consider security. They're not going to want a random laptop connected to their network. They're not going to want a random console connected to their network, right? That, if you've heard of ransomware, when it comes to hospitals, it's happening in school districts as well. So what if you get pushback from IT. It's happened to me. Um, in the San Antonio area, there was this nearby school district where they were just hit with ransomware and they had to pay the ransom. So my district is not too keen on allowing more devices on their network. It's just going to happen. So there are things that your IT can do is possibly creating a sub network, uh, setting up specific timeframes so that only certain areas in the campus or certain service in the district have access to esports. Um, so that time frame, like it's everyone's very aware of like, okay, these are the esports things. It's very supervised. The coach is there, the principal's there, whatever. It's not just kids just showing up and connecting into our Ethernet ports and just going crazy in every campus. All right. There are other options that they can do is like have separate login for PCs. Have only specific machines set up. It goes back to those MAC addresses. Your IT is usually going to have ideas when it comes to this. And what I would say is always going to be start small and grow more each season. I've had 3 switches from our first season, and we've been in 3 seasons now. We're going into our 4th season. I've had 3 switches, all of that. I didn't actually get online with the Switch until last season. Just because one, I mean, we weren't competing online through PlayVS, but also, why didn't I get all 3 of those Switches? Is because I started small. I got one dedicated team, and I'm like, how far can we get? What are you guys willing to do? And then I'll work on getting these other 2 Switches, getting the equipment. And once IT figures it out for one, they'll be able to figure it out for the rest. It's just going to accelerate that process next time as your program continues to grow. So I'm going to say big thing. If you're getting pushback, just ask them for one, let them figure it out, and then say, look, we've had success. We were top 32 in the state, or top whatever in the state. And the way we're going to improve as a program and continue to grow as a program, continue providing this important genre for our students and this amazing activity for our students is if we have more switches online. Okay, so always bring that data back. That's it. Bringing consoles is exciting. So I hope that this was informative. If there are specific questions about what practice looks like, I know that there were some specific questions in the questions that you guys submitted beforehand about how to specifically unblock a switch or how to like just completely get started. I would love to answer those directly, but let's break out into our networking session. This link right here, this PlayVS link, is actually my ID, my referral code. So if anybody is not signed up to PlayVS or knows someone and they're not sure how to get started, please, 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 you can use my referral link. And I am very willing to communicate via email to support anybody who is getting started, because it was a process, especially if you're in a bigger district like I am in San Antonio. It comes with a lot of bureaucracy, especially in larger technology departments. If you're in a small district with the IT is literally one dude, then like you got a lot more leeway because security doesn't always need to be as tight there. But I think there's a way to break us out into a small group, and I'll be able to more specifically answer any questions.
That's me. I did have a question before you move on for the kind of this part's recorded, the next part won't be. We discussed what you send to other coaches to kind of explain if you only have one switch versus they may have 3, and then just kind of that pre-match communication.
Of course. So I've got a couple examples because my students couldn't access Discord for a while. But let me just pull up one of those emails that I had, and I'll share my screen again once I get it up. Of course, this is the time that. Okay, here we go. This is. Let me find a good one. All right, this is my most recent one, the 10th of May. The slide thing. And share screen again. All right, so just an email example. Like, hey, we're gonna be playing our match tomorrow. Just a heads up, and I was literally sending this every week to the coaches that we were playing. My players will be playing from one switch. Last season there was a lot of confusion. Like all the players had to play from one switch, or they all had to play from a separate switch, or could they play from one switch? And there's a lot of confusion, a lot of miscommunication around that. So I always just cleared this up. My players will be playing from one switch. I will be monitoring them at school. We will have all of our players there. At this time, we had access to Discord, and I told them like my players understand how to complete bans properly. At the beginning of the season, my players are still kind of learning, and I said these are going to take a little bit longer because I'm kind of coaching them through that process each time. Match time starts at 4:30 in Texas, and I will send you. Something that I kind of left off. But for the Nintendo Switch, for Smash specifically, the arena only stays open for like 10 minutes before it closes if no games have started. So keep that in mind. If you're on one Switch, you're going to have to like just make it like 10 minutes beforehand and communicate that information via Discord or email again. And just letting the coach know like, hey, is this okay with you? Like, do you agree to this? If you don't agree, like, can we find a workaround? Early on in the season, my players couldn't do bans because we had no way to communicate. And the coach was like, this bans are very important to my players. What can we do? And so I was like, if you don't mind, like, I can text them to you. We could just text back and forth. I only had one team at the time, so that was a little bit more doable. And he was like, yeah, let's do it. And that was okay with him because he only had to do it for game one for each of the individual players. But yeah, he was okay with that. We texted back and forth and everyone was happy. I mean, it took a little bit longer, but it's more about like making sure both coaches are happy with how the situation is going to go. And so this is just something that I just throw out. If my players were playing from three switches, I would say they're all going to be logging in from three switches at home. I will make sure that they are on Discord and a voice channel beforehand, still monitoring them in some way. Changing the time if that's necessary. If your students don't get out until 4:45 on a particular day, schedules are different for school. Like let the other coach know, is it okay? My students aren't going to be out until 4:45. Can we actually start at 5 p.m.? There's a 30-minute window technically, but if you can set that up with the coach before, and I don't understand why coaches don't communicate more beforehand. And just saying like, hey, nice to meet you. Like, good luck, have fun. I say that at the start of every single one of my games, whether that's Rocket League, Smash, or League of Legends that I play. Like, you guys know how toxic those games can be. If you don't play them. But literally, I'm still that guy who goes in and says GLHF every single time. But yeah, this is my example. Is there anything else that you want me to go over, Melanie, before we break into a circle now?
I don't think so. I know we talked about additionally making sure that, and I think you covered it, but making sure that kids have the same devices
Mhm.
every week, so you're not flip-flopping.
Yeah,
We
I
even
covered
talked
that.
about okay, cool. We even talked about, like, when I was an elementary teacher, we had kids had their own devices. I was a third grade teacher with, like, uh, kids with Chromebooks, right? And so they were assigned a specific one. They had their own little cubbies, and so they knew I'm going to grab Chromebook number 5. Obviously, you can't
Mhm.
use Chromebooks, but like I'm going to use Switch number 5 and have those easily
Oh
assigned
yeah, yeah. Especially
to
if kids are
those.
bringing their own devices or during practice time. As soon as you're aware of your teams, and if you split them, if you have enough players to split them up into varsity, JV, if your program has grown to the point where it's like, I'm going to be more competitive and I'm going to be less like fun. Like just show up, everybody. Like, it's a fun time. Whenever you make that switch to from activity to esports, and everyone's in a different point in their program. Like when you make that switch, like varsity, you guys are playing on this one. I have a switch that does not have all the DLC packs. Guess what? That's the fun switch. Good. Y'all go play on that, right? Don't let, my varsity players are here to train. You guys all want to have fun. Great. I love you. And when you're ready to compete, you can switch over to this switch. But yeah, assigning switches, numbering stuff off, big things.
Yeah, I think it's like the elementary teacher in me. I just got to label everything. I didn't have a label machine, but I've got close to buying
I've
one.
got
So
post-it notes.
yeah. So highly recommend that. And that just keeps you also accountable for like what kids are doing on those devices. So
Yeah,
that's
specific
something.
controllers as well.
Hmm.
If one walks off, and I had one of my Nintendo Switches, not the Switch. Somebody stole the game last year. That's a
Mm-hmm.
$60 game, and I'm like, my wife's gonna be mad.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. We had iPads go missing. Cool. Well, we'll bump to the networking session. If you're watching the recording, thanks for watching. You can reach out via Discord or email Robbie if you have additional questions. You can also reach out to support@playvs.com or use the cute little orange bubble in the corner to ask your specific questions. And so we're going to end. For those of you who are joining us, you make sure when you get join the networking session, you got to like click the plus sign on the circle to join it. Your choice whether you want your screen and mic on. If you do have a noisy background, we ask that you mute it until it's your turn to chat, just because it's distracting. So thanks again for everyone who came, and I will end this and move on to networking. See you in a few.